Hey guys, how are ya? Man, I was not gonna make a video. I haven't made a video in a long time, but I had to say something about that Layman interview, Don Layman interview on CNN. And Don Layman needs to sort of do something about that interview, because he let that woman talk and talk and talk, and he didn't say nothing. Either he was working with her, which won't disappoint me, because we know that's how these medias operate. Or if you want, he needs to bring in an African scholar, not these white people, or not even some of these African American scholars. Bring in someone who is a Pan-Africanist to give their view of the slave trade. Okay? Why is it that we always allow other people to tell our story, whereas when it comes to us telling our story, we face so much an uphill battle just to tell our own story? You know, on a platform like CNN, you should have made that square. Interview her, interview another person who is knowledgeable. Don't go pick someone who doesn't know anything about it. So here's my reply. And you can bring me on. Don Lemon, bring me on. You know, here's my reply, right? This is recently, about a couple of years ago, a professor from University of London said this, right? I can't remember his name, but I'll put in a description. And I'll even put the video that's on YouTube where this professor is saying this. You know, at the time of slave trade, when it started, not the time you guys talk of, I think it was 14 whatever or 15 whatever, that the first slaves arrived in the Americas. That wasn't the time slave trade started, right? It's been happening for years. But the action period where it started, it didn't start from West Africa. It started from the Congo. Okay? So white people they skipped the whole of West Africa and they went to the Congo. But do you know why they skipped the whole of West Africa? Because at that time, West African countries had, communities and tribes there, they had created an empire. There was the Songhai Empire, there was the Mali Empire. It was going to be very hard for the Europeans to defeat them. If anything, this professor, who's white, with all the evidence that they have now, says white people could have lost. We could have beaten them had they gone and started picking people up from West Africa. Now, so they had to go to the Congo, which you can call is Southeast Africa or Southern Eastern Africa. I mean, Southern Western Africa. No, sorry, the Congo. So the reason why they went that in the Congo, their communities were not as strong as the communities in West Africa. But even then, the way they entered, they didn't enter that with just... There's nowhere in history like that woman says, oh, there are people on the shores, on the beaches, in cages. In cages? Africans were out there making cages for their own people? Come on now. Come on. Our ancestors are right now in their graves turning. Okay? Because that's a lie. That's a lie. Okay? So you go there, they went there as Christians. The king, I think it was Muvimbu, who was the king of the Bakongo people, was fooled into believing that they needed to be Christianized. You know, it was good, it's going to make us all good and all that stuff. So this guy becomes a Christian. And what that did, it opened up the doorway for these Europeans to get in. And then when they got in, they started taking the slaves. Straight away, they were stealing people. Okay? They were stealing people. He even writes a message, a letter to the king of Portugal, complaining about these people's behavior. Now, did these people not have maybe accomplices who were black? Maybe they did. You know, but they connived those. Those people didn't say, okay, yeah, the people sell them. Nah. They'll say, okay, we'll give you money. You want to steal us those people? Or we'll give you something. You want to steal these people for us? You know, there's always privateers. in history where countries didn't use their army, they used privateers to fight for them. And there's always people willing to connive with other people. In every society, if we went and looked, we'll find the same thing. But how did they get to West Africa? The West African Empire, just like most empires, were starting to crumble. So there was weakness. There was a bit of infighting going on. And these white people, when they showed up, what did they do? But what do I mean by infighting? Every society, every continent has some infighting them, has experienced infighting. I think one continent that has experienced more infighting is actually Europe. Even up to now, what's happening in Europe? They're fighting. When they came to Africa, what did they do? They started fighting. They almost had the First World War in Africa until they realized that, there was plenty for everyone. That's when they sat down and divided the continent among themselves. Okay? So, when they got to West Africa, eventually, they were just capturing people. They were capturing people. There was no one on the beaches with for sale stickers on them in cages. It wasn't like that. That's a lie. That's a lie. And she knew what she was doing. She lied. But she was laughing as she was saying that. You can even see she was laughing it into our faces. And Don Lennon did nothing. Okay? So they get there. They started stealing initially. All right? So they're stealing people. Okay? And then what happened after that, there was no trade. It was an act of war. So they'll go there, build up one kingdom, and then connive with that kingdom, say, okay, we're going to protect you. You become an a protectorate of the British Empire. And what we'll do is we're gonna train your people up, and you can go and capture other people. Now, let me tell you this. Every continent, like I said before, had infighting. Africa is just the same as every other continent. But when you look at the way even slavery itself was, and what used to happen was, when people were infighting, tribes fought or empires fight, soldiers were captured. When those captors, they became slaves of it's just everywhere. When the Romans invaded Europe, when the Romans invaded England, they did the same thing. They captured slaves from there. This was a common occurrence. But among Africans, once those slaves are captured, if your slave married a local girl, he was no longer a slave. Most of them eventually, they ended up just becoming part of society. That's it. That was our slavery. It was very humane, not like the way inhumane, the way it was in Asia, and the way it became in Europe. If you look at the word slavery, doesn't even have anything to do with Africans. It comes from the Slavs of Europe, who everyone was enslaving. So the mentality of enslaving people, they already had it, the British. By the time they got to Africa, they saw what was happening in West Africa, and they started creating, focusing more on looking at the weaknesses of these tribes and taking advantage of them. That's when you created the Dayami. But what happened to even the people who were in the so-called protectorate? They end up getting captured. The Dayami fought for the French. First of all, they fought the French, and then eventually they started fighting for them. But as we all know, at the end of the day, the French also captured the Dayami. So there was no one who was safe. But then what happens when you're being attacked, when your country is under attack, when a nation, an empire is under attack? People get into survival mode, and they get into groups. And then that survival mode, the victims now are trying to survive. And this is when people do things that they're not supposed to be doing. If white people didn't go there, there was not going to be no slave trade. There was not going to be Africans on the beaches in chains. That's a lie. Here's the thing. This is what happens when people get attacked. Let me tell you something that most of you don't know. I'll give an example of the Jews. In Germany, the Jews in Germany were the most educated Jews in the whole of Europe. And the reason for that was because Germany opened up to the Jews. After 500 or so years of denying them access to a lot of things, the Germans said, nah, let them be free. And they allowed them to be free. And they became very successful. There was only about 500,000 Jews living in Germany, and yet they started controlling the economy. of pretty much of Germany. You know, they became very successful. And when the Nazis started killing the Jews, you know, all the Jews in Europe were affected, but the least affected Jews were actually from Germany. You know why? Because they had money. They had money, they managed to live, and also some of them had associates. So if you were, let's say, a lawyer, you know, you're going to work with a German person and you open up a law firm. And these became friends. And when people saw what was happening, they would tell them, you know what, you have to leave. And most of these guys sold their businesses to the Germans, got a little bit of money and left. That's why the least affected Jews were actually the ones from Germany. The funny thing is the Nazis from Germany, but the ones in Austria and Poland, in the Netherlands, those are the ones who faced the biggest, who were affected the most. But here's the thing: when these people were attacked, there were some people who they call traitors. I saw this interview from a Jewish who lived during this time as a young boy. Enzo, that's his name. He's into investment now. And he said, you know, it was Christians, which we'll never hear about the most, who protected him. But before, and eventually the people who sold him out were traitors, were fellow Jews. You know, because they were also trying to survive. So they probably got told, you bring in more Jews, you can go. You know, and this is what happens. You can't turn around and blame the victims. You know, Africans were not selling each other to them. We were under attack, and people started finding ways to survive. And you knew the weaknesses, and you took advantage of that to benefit you, to benefit everyone else. I'm not even asking for reparation. I don't give a crap. That's not my story. However, whoever is supporting for reparation, I support where they're coming from. That's not what I'm trying to say here. What I'm trying to tell you is we need to stand up when lies get told. And Don Lemon didn't do his job. He let that woman look like she knew what she was talking about when she actually didn't even know what she was talking about. Okay? Come on, man. You need to be fair here and bring up another person who's African oriented, who understands African history, to come and speak about what she said, because that was wrong. That was wrong. Everything she said about that was wrong. You can't turn around and blame the victims. Oh, the people that went around fighting to stop slavery should also be compensated. All the slave owners in the Caribbean have been compensated. Don't you know that? All of them, they've been compensated. So what are you talking about? Come on now, guys. Thank you. Let's do something about this. Goodbye.